Brian G., the EVOG here. You join me today in the cockpit of Storm. Storm is our 2018 Tesla Model S. Recently, I've gotten lots of questions about using non-Tesla EVs on the Tesla Superchargers. So I figured I'd put together a video for non-Tesla EV owners on Superchargers. Then, as I was putting the video together, I realized that there are 5 different types of Superchargers and lots of new EV owners with Teslas and other CCS EVs. I also realize there are many owners like me who currently own EVs across Tesla and other brands like Rivian. So I expanded this video to address supercharging for those new Tesla owners, new CCS EV owners, as well as those with Tesla and other EV brands in their garage. With spring break, as well as graduation and summer vacation season approaching, many people will be taking road trips in EVs. So this video is intended to be a good resource for EV road trips, which should look a little bit different this year with Tesla opening up supercharging to non-Tesla EVs. So let's get into it. So believe it or not, Tesla actually has 5 different types of superchargers. You've got version 1, which typically tops out at about 120 kilowatts. You've got version 2, which are 150 kilowatts. And these operate in pairs, both V1 and V2. Stalls for these V1 and V2 superchargers are typically labeled 1A and 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and so on. And A and B typically will end up splitting power when both are in use. So you want to avoid sharing stalls A and B, if at all possible, so that you can charge faster. Tesla also, a few years ago, implemented a supercharger type called urban superchargers. Along with version 1 and version 2, urban superchargers are also only available to Tesla vehicles, as far as I can tell. The urban superchargers are typically a smaller form factor, and they've got different looking stalls without the empty interior of the stall. And as the name would indicate, you will typically find these in more urban settings, and in many cases you'll find them in pay-to-park garages. And the other thing to know about the urban superchargers is that they typically will have a speed limit of 72 kilowatts. All right, so that's version 1, version 2, as well as urban superchargers. The third type of superchargers, or fourth type of supercharger, is the version 3. And these are typically newer, and they support up to 250 kilowatts of charging per stall. So you're never splitting power. Version 3 are, by and large, the majority of current superchargers out there in the wild that you'll find. The fifth type is the version 4 superchargers. These are the newest, ultra-fast, 350 kilowatt chargers, but they're currently limited to 250 kilowatts. At some point in the not too distant future, hopefully, we'll see Tesla push out a software update to these to increase the charging speeds from 250 kilowatts up to 350. These version 4s, again, look totally different. These guys are much taller. So those taller stalls are equipped with, and I'm guessing designed in that way to be able to support much longer cables. Those cables are anyway from 3 to 4 feet longer, so that we can support EVs with, regardless of what the charging port location is on those vehicles. The version 4s and some version 3s also have built-in CCS 1, or what we call magic dock adapters built in, so that any EV that is using CCS will be able to charge on these magic dock superchargers. The version 4s are also the first superchargers that we've seen with a payment terminal screen on them. I think in some jurisdictions, particularly in Europe, perhaps even in Canada, um, they require some form of payment on the supercharger stall itself. So Tesla's approach of just using their mobile app doesn't satisfy that requirement, and version 4s were built with a screen and a payment mechanism. The last thing I'll mention about the V4 is the fact that there are only a few of them deployed globally. There's probably less than 10 of them here in the US as I'm recording this on April 17th, 2024. So those are the 5 types of superchargers. Now, earlier this year on Leap Day of all days, February 29th, Tesla officially opened up Supercharging Access to Ford as the first OEM, non-Tesla OEM obviously, to have access to approximately 15,000 Tesla version 3 superchargers. This marked what I call a seminal moment in our EV adoption or EV transition, as the largest, most ubiquitous, and reliable DC fast charging network became available to non-Tesla EVs. Now, a few weeks after that, on April 18th, we saw that Rivian was the next EV maker to get access to those Tesla superchargers. It hasn't been announced yet, but I would be surprised if not by the end of April, certainly by the end of May. GM will likely be the next manufacturer to be granted access to the Tesla superchargers. Now, in order to use those 15,000 or so Tesla V3 superchargers, there's 3 key things that need to happen. The first one is that owners of those vehicles need to have an adapter for the Tesla NACS plugs on the supercharger to fit into their CCS1 charge ports on those non-Tesla EVs. Both Ford as well as Rivian are offering adapters free to customers in the order in which they purchase their EVs from those manufacturers. So the earlier you purchased one of the Ford EVs or Rivian EVs, the earlier you'll get your free adapter from those manufacturers. Though they're both Rivian and Ford are also saying that only those Tesla-made adapters are authorized for use with superchargers. Tom Moloughney with the State of Charge YouTube channel has validated 2 other third-party adapters. You've got the A to Z as well as the Electron NACS to CCS adapters, and each of those will run you roughly $200 or so if you can find them. The last time I looked, they were both out of stock. Both of these should be viable options, as it will take a while for both Ford, Rivian, and soon GM to be able to get those free adapters out to their customers. Now, the second thing that you need in order to use those 15,000 or so version 3 superchargers is that the EV manufacturers need to update your vehicle's software to work with the Tesla superchargers. They've got to update that software such that the communication between Tesla's chargers and those EVs occurs. It needs to be updated for payment, right? So that you can engage in plug and play usage or access. And of course, the software has to be updated in those EVs so that navigation and route planning will now include those Tesla superchargers to which you now have access. Battery preconditioning is also something that's got to be updated in software if you happen to have an EV that has battery preconditioning. The third thing that has to happen for this to work is that obviously Tesla's got to update the supercharger software to recognize and support each of the manufacturers' EVs as they allow them access to these superchargers. Now, you won't be able to use superchargers just because you have an adapter, whether it's one of the official ones or one of the third party ones that I just mentioned from A to Z or Electron. Your EV needs to be granted access by Tesla and its software updated by your manufacturer. These superchargers are listed in the Tesla Supercharger Map as superchargers that are open to NACS. And you can see how ubiquitous they are on major North American travel routes. Now you'll notice here on the Tesla site that Tesla also offers what they call superchargers that are open to other EVs. There are a couple of things that you need to know about this. Any CCS1 EV can use these superchargers that are open to other EVs, as they have CCS1 adapters built in. As I mentioned earlier, we call these the Magic Dock supercharger stations. And the other thing to know about these stations is the fact that they require you to use the Tesla mobile app for activation, billing, etc. However, there are only maybe 500 or so of these superchargers that are open to other EVs. So it's a much, much smaller number, right? We're talking about maybe 500 versus 15,000 that are currently opened to Ford, Rivian, and I'm expecting soon to GM. So much fewer, and they may be hard to find depending on where you're located and obviously looking to charge. Now, having said all of that, there are several things that you have to be aware of. The Supercharger map on the Tesla website makes finding these chargers super easy. All you have to do is enter a location, whether that's an address or just a zip code, and then you've got the ability to filter in a couple of different ways. Typically, I will deselect everything that's on that map and use filters either for superchargers, right? The supercharger filter will show you all of their superchargers, whether it's version 1 or 2, the ones that are open to NACS, as well as the ones that are open to other EVs. That first filter for superchargers will show you everything. So I will turn that one off as well. The second filter that's relevant here is the filter for superchargers that are open to other EVs, right? And this one will show you the Magic Docks where you've got the CCS1 adapter built in. And it doesn't matter what type of EV you have, as long as you've got a CCS1 charging port on your vehicle, you should be able to use those Magic Dock stations. But as I said earlier, they're few and far between outside of New York and California currently, but we are seeing Tesla build out those Magic Dock sites in a lot more places. So be on the lookout for those. The third filter is around those superchargers that are open to NACS, right? And this one will show superchargers that are open to OEMs with NACS to CCS adapters that we just talked about. Another nice thing about this Supercharger map on the Tesla website is it provides you the ability to click on a given supercharger and get all the information you need about it in terms of address, as well as the per kilowatt hour cost to use a given supercharger. The rates are going to vary based on location, so it's nice that you've got that information right there to look at. Now, charge port location on your EV may cause you to take up two different charging posts depending on where it is. So I did a video a few months back on this with our Rivian R1T, which shows that if you park all the way to the far right, assuming that space is vacant, then you're able to use that rightmost supercharger without blocking an extra stall for a potential Tesla owner looking to charge there as well. Yeah, our first Magic Dock charging session. Now, I do want to give you a feel for what things look like here. Now, the charge port on the Rivian, as you probably know, is driver's side front, right? So where we're parked right now in order to charge is not consuming another, an additional spot where a Tesla driver wouldn't be able to charge, right? So typically a Tesla charging on this with the charge port in the back driver's side would be parked over here, right? So right now this space is going to be vacant, but the next Tesla driver can actually come right in here in order to use 2C, right? So in being able to park where we are, it doesn't impact any other Tesla driver's ability to plug in and to charge. So this is one of those things that you just want to be aware of. Certainly as more version 4 superchargers with the longer cables roll out, this becomes a little bit less of an issue. So it is something to be aware of, and we want to try and avoid that as much as possible. A fourth item is that both superchargers open to NACS, as well as the superchargers that are open to other EVs, cost a premium to charge your non-Tesla EV. On a recent trip from Cape Cod back here to Maryland, we were charged 55 cents per kilowatt hour versus the advertised price at that supercharger, which was 35 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, the math on that is a 57% premium to charge our non-EV. So you'll need to determine if the location, amenities, the convenience, and certainly the reliability of a Tesla supercharger is worth it to you to pay somewhat of a premium in order to charge there versus another CCS network. The last thing I'll mention is that you do have the ability to buy down the cost per kilowatt hour by paying Tesla a monthly subscription fee of roughly $13. I think it's $12.99 for the subscription. The math on that is such that if you're going to be using it multiple times per month, it may very well be worth it for you to pay that, depending on the per kilowatt hour charge with and without it in the locations where you expect to be charging. So hopefully you found this video useful. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone you think might be able to benefit from it. Please also comment below if you've got questions that I didn't address in this video, or if you would like more information about EV charging. So Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.